and hit it. Boom. So now we're on. So thanks everybody, obviously, for being on. Another week we got panel talking the Weber brothers, and last week we actually did a lot of talk around. It was Mother's Day, so we did a little bit on kind of mother's impact. And then because of last week, there we actually in our world over here. And I don't know if everybody knows it, but Dr. Davis, says Dr. D that's on right now, and Joe, we're actually Masonic brothers as well. And so, we had a couple of our Masonic brothers pass away. So the past couple of weeks, we've had quite a few funerals. And then I think I put it on there. I'm not sure if you guys saw it or not on the Weber brothers, but Jabari's father passed away. Good morning, Dr. D. The other Dr. D, Dr. D Moss. We got D Davis and D Moss. Dr. Davis? Dr. Moss, I meant? All right, Dr. Moss. We'll let us know when you can hear us. If you have a problem, maybe we can chat it up or something. But it looked like you paused too. But so either way, and then getting back to Jabari's father passed away as well. So there was we've had quite a few funerals, and in the light of that, I thought it kind of important to talk about a couple things. So I got a couple different topics down here to kind of talk about, but one of the important ones I think that that kind of came to me was with a lot of these funerals was it's kind of like what will yours read, right? It's kind of like that dash between the day you're born and the day you die. What will yours read? And then I'll give you another question. I'm actually going to ask this question before we even get started. I just asked this question. And I'll start with you, Scrod. And don't feel any kind of way when I ask this question, okay, to everybody. Dr. Moss, can you hear me? I can see you, but I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, I'm going to assume that's a no. All right. Dr. Moss?
Yeah, it's me. Finally got in.
Awesome. So I'm just going to shoot a question out to the group real quick because I'm really, really interested to see who can answer it, okay? So I'm going to start with you, Scribe. Do you know what your great-grandfather's name is?
Which one?
I don't care. I just want to know if you know your great-grandfather's name.
Cleveland is one, and my other one was Big Daddy's name? I can't remember his name. Oh, almost said it. I can't remember my Big Daddy's name. But one was Cleveland, and the other one was Big Daddy.
All right. How about you, J.
Last name?
I used to know all of that, because a long time ago I did you had to do those family tree projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to know the names and, everybody on each side, but, that left me, years ago. But I have family on one side. It was actually pretty interesting. I had my uncle, and my uncle did Ancestry.com.
Mm-hmm.
And, he also did one of those services where he submitted his DNA. To see what it was comprised of, and it was actually quite surprising. On my mom's side of the family, the majority of the DNA is Latin American versus African, or African American or whatnot.
Sure.
So
I could tell you that. Look at you in the mirror.
Well, that's that's a good one. Well, see, the thing is, I don't say I'm all the way Latin American yet, because I don't know what my dad's side of the family looks like, and that's actually the more ghetto side, or not to say it's more black, but it's that side is it's a little bit more certain in regards to what we truly are, which yes, we're African American, but it was weird that we were talking about it, and my uncle, he's the president of a black bank, And, he just found out that, the majority of his DNA is Latin American. So, like from Honduras and, from some of those South American countries. Because I knew we had family from Honduras. Like one of my great grandfathers was from Honduras. And, my mom, she would tell stories of how her and her sister would go with him to Honduras. And, they would go to the town that they were from, and it was pretty interesting. So I have an idea of my history. It's just that in terms of names, if I reach out to family members, I could probably figure it out. But we have a pretty solid, I think for all things considering, we have a pretty solid understanding of what our heritage is.
Okay. Doc Davis.
Uh,
Grandfather's name.
no, actually I don't on either side.
Okay. How about Dr. Moss?
Well, I don't know right now, but it is written down. So I do have it, but I don't have it on top of my head right now.
Gotcha. So I'm going to ask another question real quick. And I don't mean it as a trick question, but do you guys know who Martin Luther King is? I promise it's not a trick question.
As you smile.
You'll probably get it wrong just at first guess, but do we all know who Martin Luther King is? Anybody can answer.
You're speaking of the civil rights leader, right?
Yeah, I know who he is.
Who is he, Dr. Moss?
He is a man who, in the 50s and 60s, led a movement that allowed African Americans to engage more in the American lifestyle. Not fully engage more.
So it was kind of a trick question because that was actually Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But Martin Luther King Jr.'s dad, right?
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
But
well, you never answered my question, Justin.
What was that?
I said, I asked, is it the civil rights leader? You didn't say yes or no, so.
You're right. You did ask a question.
Yeah.
Answer the question with a question. I got you. No, but I kind of asked the question honestly for a reason because when you start thinking about that, right? Now, and I'd actually venture to say, I'll just do the experiment again, right? Let's just for argument's sake, right? Scribe, we'll start again with you. What's your great grandmother's name?
God dog it. One of them was Bertha. One of them was Minnie.
Go ahead, Wilson. J-Dub. Great grandma.
I got four.
I know you do.
Okay.
I'm just making a point.
Oh, okay. I know.
J-Dub.
I'll just refer to my earlier statement.
I got you.
Because I don't, like I said, I don't know.
Dr. Davis? Great grandma?
I don't know.
Dr. Moss?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's written down. I have it written down.
Sure. And most people actually know their great grandmothers. It's interesting. Most people can usually say who their great grandmothers is, but usually the great grandfathers is usually tough. And a lot of reason for that is because, quite honestly, to us, right, they really didn't do a whole lot, right? They just kind of lived, they survived, and you ended up here, right? And a lot of times the mother's history is usually known a little more because we spend more time with our moms and all that kind of jazz. And so we tend to know our mother's side more than our father's. And a lot of that just has to do truly because a lot of our fathers never really left a legacy. And that, that comes for different reasons, right? But I think that's something we can maybe visit a little bit later, which is, just the legacy we leave and the legacy we want to leave and just something to think about. But it got me really back on to Mr. Kanye. And I thought that Mr. Kanye's comments to me really, really stirred up some conversation and some thought about why aren't we leaving legacies, right? And in another 100 years, will your great grandchildren know your name, right? So I kind of wanted to start with Kanye. Does everybody know kind of what happened with the whole Kanye situation and his comments and so on and so forth? Is there anyone that's not familiar?
Yeah, give me a synopsis.
All right. So, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But he basically did an interview, and in that interview, he made the comment that 400 years of slavery was a choice. All right. He later came back and clarified those statements by saying, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that basically alluding to mental slavery and saying that if we don't learn from the past, that basically essentially we're going to be slaves for another 400 years. And so his comments were meant to say, hey, let's not repeat the past of how we've been mentally enslaved. Obviously, people took that a million different ways, but I'm going to try to use his words and talk to his words because I think they were valid. In my opinion, I think they were valid because I think that we do suffer from some mental slavery today. So I'll start with that. I don't know if there's any thoughts there, and then I'll just kind of keep going as we go. Does anybody want to start with that?
I think with Kanye, well, I'll jump in.
Right.
I think with that whole situation, yeah, I think there's a little merit. Because Kanye is not a stupid guy. So, with everything that with the controversy swirling around him, I think it's a little bit overblown, but at the same time, I think it was calculated. Maybe a little opportunistic on his part. And which I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just to me, I think that the way that he's going about doing it, he's serving dual purposes, right? Like he's trying to sell records and he's trying to educate our people, but he's doing it in a manner where he's trying to maximize shock value. So so I'm kind of a little mixed on what happened, but of course we all know Kanye, we know his body of work. So with everything, I just take it with a grain of salt.
Okay.
Well, first of all, he's an entertainer, and he's getting, like just say, he's getting ready to probably bring out some new album, of which I will refuse to buy, because you don't bring heat up on yourself trying to capitalize off of the racial undertones that have been brought forward with the current administration and political environment in America. I think what he said was ignorant. I think what he said was stupid, and I lost a great deal of respect for him and any other thing that ever comes and spews out of his mouth from this point forward. So that's how I feel. Period.
Okay. Anybody else?
I actually have a better question, if I can introduce it.
Oh, go, sure. I mean, I don't know if Dr. Moss or Dr. Davis had anything, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that his statement is premature, but I do believe that unless we have more action, like Weber Brothers, ways in which Black men who have a sense of an understanding of the system, understanding of what it means to be purpose-driven, what it means to be a part of a community and support the community, unless we get more movements like this going, I think that we are headed towards another slave generation.
Dr. Davis?
Actually, a lot of people have asked me what my opinion is on this, and I've I've still just kind of sat back and said, well, let me just see where this is going to go. You know, where is he going with this? Is this a publicity stunt? Which I think it is, you know. Do I think he was wrong in what he said? Possibly. You know, the narrative of the transatlantic slave trade isn't completely what they taught us in the schools, actually. So, not completely. So, there's some differences. But I don't think he was probably the right person to be doing it. I think how he did it, the delivery, everything was off. And I think the majority of our folks just definitely aren't ready to hear some of these things.
So I'm just gonna read real quick what he came back and tried to clean up the statement. And I say try to clean up because I only say I think at least I'm using myself as the example. I know I've said some things before, like passionately, where I felt like it came from a good place, but it came out wrong, right? You know, and you don't always get that second chance to make a first impression, right, or to come out. So, but I feel like when a person tries to clarify themselves or they say something, that we should take that with credence. That's just my opinion. But this is what he said. He said, to make myself clear, of course I know that slaves did not get shackled and put on a boat by free will. My point is for us to have stayed in that position, even though the numbers were on our side, means that we were mentally enslaved. And then he quickly made, he then said something else. He said, the reason why I bought it 400 years is because we can't be mentally imprisoned for another 400 years. We need to have free thought now. Even the statement was an example of free thought, just an idea. So in my world, I feel like there's a little credence to that, right? And I feel like it should cause us to kind of look in the mirror a little bit and just say, okay, is any part of this true? And if so, how? So go ahead. I'll kind of leave that out there. And Justin, I know you had something else.
All I can say is want. Say what you said what you meant the first time. Go back and you talk. Well, you sit down. Okay, let me try to clean this up. No, you said what you meant the first time. It sounds just like the idiot that's in office now. No, you said what you meant the first time, and I take it for what you said, and we'll keep moving.
Okay. So even though he came back and was like, nah, this is not what I meant, you're like, nah, that's what you said.
Because you saw that the backlash that you received, not only after the fact, but immediately from all the individuals that were there, as well as because you know what, if that was what he truly meant, then when the guy that was there, the black man that was there, who eviscerated his ass very intelligently, there on the spot, why didn't you say that then? Why didn't you say it then? You had all the opportunity, you had the platform, you had everybody looking at you, and you said, "Oh man, okay." That's basically what you did. So then now, oh man, this is really bad. Let me go let me talk to my publicist, let me talk to somebody, let me get the right words put together. Get the fuck out of here.
And all I'm saying is, okay, so for just a moment, let's just forget then maybe he made the first comments, right? And let's look maybe at his explanation of the second comment. Because Charlemagne was the guy, and you're right, Charlemagne broke him down.
No, it wasn't Charlemagne. No,
was
it
it
was
Charlemagne?
there on the spot, that whatever his name.
Okay. Because Charlemagne did the interview. That's where it was originally, Charlemagne, but I'm not sure who broke him down after. I thought
it wasn't Charlemagne. He did this. It was on TMZ. He made that original statement at the offices of TMZ talking, which I don't know why he would say such crap like that at TMZ, but in any rate, the black guy's name, I can't remember his name. He's like TMZ sports guy.
Yeah, I know the guy, the black
guy. Stood up. Yeah, I don't know, his own black one to have. But anyway, so that's when the statement was made. But to say, let's take what you said. Say, okay, take away from the fact that, all right, he didn't say ridiculous stuff in the first place. I mean, of course that's the case. I think so. We, as a people, right or wrong, we enslave ourselves to quite a few things to assimilate, be what culture or whatever it is that we look for us to be. What he stated is true in my opinion. It does have some viability, but the fact that he did it after the fact that he said it after what he stated before to try to clean it up, I really can't take that from him. Oh, okay, you said something else. Good for you, bro.
Anybody else?
To me, I think I agree with Justin that we can look at Justin's second statement and take his first statement as kind of a misstep and an error. But I think that highlights the importance of us putting ourselves in a situation where we have wise counsel, that we don't just say things in that kind of a venue without vetting it through some people that we trust.
To make sure it comes out right.
And just off of that statement alone, you've demonstrated how similar, in certain ways, Kanye and Trump are, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
And maybe that's why they get along,
Yeah, I mean, and the real truth is a lot of people got along with Trump before. There's a lot of people still get along with Trump. And I'm talking about black people, but I don't want to go there today. I want to kind of stick with this for a minute. Because I'm going to tell you one of the things that this really brings up, especially when, once again, I kind of focus on the second part of things, is are we all familiar with Willie Lynch and those Willie Lynch letters, and whether it's true or not, but just the whole concept of the Willie Lynch letter? Is everybody familiar with that?
I've heard of it, but maybe you can refresh us what it's about.
All right, I tell you what I'm going to do. There's 3 minutes left on this meeting. So if I understand it right, Doc D, and I'm talking about Dr. Davis, we just can click off and then click back on, right? And it's just start our new meeting, or do we have to wait for it to end and then just start it over?
You will normally wait until it ends, but it should give you an option to end the meeting, and then you can come back in.
All right, so what I'm gonna do, just because there's 2 minutes left, and what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna end the meeting and start it back over. So all you gotta do is just click the link back up and it'll start back over. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring up the Willie Lynch letter, and we'll just look at it real quick because I think it ties hand in hand to this concept of what he's talking about. And I think after we look at that, I think I just want to talk about just kind of the state of where we are now and what we can see as solutions and stuff to kind of help get us out of this mental slavery, if that makes sense. So literally, I'm just going to end the meeting, just click the link, and just jump right back on, and then I can start back recording.
These things truly was on your heart. Right, that's what I'll say that to the end of my days. First thing you say is yours. Now, and if you don't know how to appropriately communicate, you need to find somebody to do it for you. Now, here's the deal with Kanye, though. I'll give the moron that's in the office. He has had a proven history of being unable to appropriately communicate himself. This is not the case with Kanye. He makes his living by writing. He knows how to communicate appropriately. He does. He chooses to when he wants to communicate in a certain manner. Which once again, why I say, oh, this is for an album.
I think he had mentioned something too about his medication stuff, which once again I'm not necessarily buying off.
The couple that he is nuts does add to the even a lower level of credibility I give to any state that he does.
So can everybody see my screen here? And if so, what do you see? Yes, no, see my screen?
Yeah.
I can see it.
What do you see? You hear me? What do you see on the screen?
We see the letter, the Willie Lynch letter.
Okay, cool. No, I didn't know if you could see it because I have it on a split screen, so I wasn't sure if you could see it. All right, so real quick, the Willie Lynch letter, it's called The Making of the Slave. Like you say, supposedly this was delivered by a guy named Willie Lynch in Virginia in 1712. He's supposed to be a British slave master in the West Indies who was invited to Virginia to teach them, the slave owners, how to basically tame the slave. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of read it, kind of paraphrasing it. Obviously, you can look it up at any time, but it says, "I greet you here at the James River in this year of our Lord. First, I want to thank you guys for being here, bringing me here to help you solve some of your problems with your slaves. Your invitation reached me, my modest plantation, where we experimented with slaves, some of the newest and oldest methods to control slaves. Ancient Rome's would envy us if my program is implemented." So it says, "In our boat sailed south, James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish. I saw enough to know the problem. Not need, while Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along the highways in great numbers, you're using the tree and the rope on occasions. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple miles back. You're not only losing valuable stock by hangs, but you're having uprising, slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left in the fields too long for maximum profit, and you suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problem is. You know what your problems are. I don't need to elaborate on that. I'm not here to enumerate your problems. I'm here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method of controlling your flax. I guarantee every time, I guarantee every one of you that if you install correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I've outlined a number of differences among the slaves and make the differences bigger. I use fear, distrust, envy, and control." So I'll say that one more time. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves and make the differences bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control. These methods have worked on a modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On top of the list is age, but it's there only because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There's intelligence, size, sex, size of plantations and status on plantations, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on a hill, east, west, north, south, with fine hair, coarse hair, tall, short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust and envy stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, should carry on and will become self-refueling and self-regenerating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves and the dark-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male versus the female. You must also have the white servants and the overseers distrust all blacks. It is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful of each other. Thank you. Let's make a slave. All right, so we can keep going, but I think that was enough of an introduction of what the Willie Lynch letters are and mean to at least kind of start the conversation and tie it into kind of what Kanye was saying. So I'll just open it up with thoughts. Just open it up there.
Well, I think that right there, that kind of sums it up in terms of, of course, what was done, you know, to perpetuating
Actually,
slavery in
I'm
the
gonna read
South.
one more part. I'm gonna read one more part just because I think it's kind of interesting.
Go for it.
I just want to read one more part. It says, "Let us make a slave. What do we need? First of all, we need a black nigger man, a pregnant nigger woman, and her baby nigger boy. Second, we will use the same basic principle that we use in breaking a horse, combined with some more sustaining factors. What we do with horses is that we break them from one form of life to another. That is, we reduce them from their natural state in nature. Whereas nature provides them with the natural capacity to take care of their offspring, we break that natural string of independence from them and thereby create a dependency status so that we are able to get them from the useful production for our business and pleasure." I just wanted to read that part for a reason. Any thoughts there, and I'll tell you why.
Well, no, like I was saying, I mean, that right there, that kind of sums up, slavery, in terms of what was done, and I would hate to call it this, but it's our heritage, and thinking about today, you know, thinking about the day and time that we're in right now, and reading that letter, uh, you know, you can see how some of those elements of the letter are still pervasive in the community today.
Like
And
what? Like what?
come again?
Like what?
Well, I guess you could say. I mean, you still always have the light skin versus dark skin debate. I mean, when you talk to elders in the community and the African American, I mean, elders in the African American community versus the young folks. I mean, they're so. Uh, I mean, like I said, it's just. I mean, it's kind of hard to describe, but I mean, that's how I feel, right? That's how I feel in terms of when I hear that letter. It's like, yeah, it's some of the same things, that are in place today. It may not be in the form of slavery, but it comes in other forms, right? And nowadays it's digital. You you kind of see a lot of that stuff digitally. But another thing to consider too, um, and this is something that we've just learned in science, and that's the fact that trauma can actually change our DNA. And so, with everything, so the real question for me with slavery, did slavery have that impact where, it fundamentally changed the DNA of African Americans? And
That's an awesome question. I'm gonna write that one down because I think that's a good thing.
no, yeah, definitely. I think it's a great question because like I said, we're just learning about this stuff, right? As we advance in science and technology, we're gaining access to more information that we've never had before, in the past. And it would be, and so reading the Willie Lynch letter and seeing the impact that it had on our community, you got to wonder whether some of this stuff is just in our DNA now because of those 300-400 years of slavery and how it impacted our people.
Any other thoughts?
Um, I think the Willie Lynch letter. I think it's a good start to colonialism 101, and a lot of what they talked about, isn't too unique to other parts of the world. Like, for example, over in India with their caste system and how, you know, what happened over there. Except, I mean, there are some differences, you know, but if you go down further south to what happened to the Dravidians, it really isn't that different. It's not as unique as we think it is.
Well, I would agree he learned it from somewhere, right?
Well, you know, I mean, you know, and the reason why I choose colonialism is because, you know, there's that's just a small piece of what was done to us to be able to take control or to enslave us. I mean, it was so insidious. It was even introduced to us as far as with religion. Okay. So even to this day, we still hold on to a lot of their doctrine, you know. So I'm not too sure how, you know, there's a lot for us to fight and overcome because a lot of us still hold on to a lot of this stuff.
Scrog, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, the whole letter itself. I mean, there's multiple folks, both black, white, whomever, will tell you, hey, man, the letter itself isn't real. Even the wording, many of the words that are used weren't used until the later 19th century, and this letter was purportedly written in the late 18th century. Doesn't match. In addition to that, the guy who said plantation owners in the West Indies, in most cases, they were large, very large by that point in time, and the people didn't stay there. But anyway, I think that whether it was, you know, a whole system of doing this, I think it just had happened by stands of finding various ways to pit us against each other. Now, I forget who kept talking, but they're exactly right in my opinion. This is not just the only thing. I mean, there's so many different reasons as you could get into, and I mean, there are classes. There have been multiple doctoral papers written, theses, the whole life trying to explain it. Hell, I can't explain it. The question is, you know, living here in what needs to be done, or what can we do to eliminate this mentality from us now, right? That's the question. And honestly, I don't know of anyone who has an answer that just will work, you know, because it's very complex cultural issue, not black and white. It's not a computer program. It's something you can just type in a great amount of code and make it work. You're dealing with people who within themselves are very complex and differ from one another. I don't know.
So,
And
go ahead,
well,
Justin.
another thing I want to add too, and I think it's important to make this parallel. Some of the concepts that are discussed in the letter are pervasive. You know, is not just, you know, of course, not just applicable to, you know, slavery, right? You know, when you talk about the concept of pitting people against each other, you know, because of their differences. I know a lot of people mentioned other countries, talked about India. I would even say Brazil. You know, some of those places where, you know, they of course say, you know, focus on, you know, the color of skin and the differences, but even in politics, you know, you could take that same concept, you know, bring it into politics, and that right there is the blueprint of how Trump came into power. You know, because the powers that be pitted everyone against each other because of these differences, instead of, you know, focusing on common ground and focusing on a candidate. Just focusing on the real issues. I mean, you know, divisiveness is is a tool that has been used by the powerful for, you know, centuries, in order to, control the masses. So, like I said, I think, you know, the power of divisiveness, you know, it's very powerful. And, I think that, I mean, the only way to overcome it is, if people learn about it and I don't want to say accept it in the sense that, that they have to accept it, but they have to recognize it. And I think that's really the only way to move forward. Which, going back to John's point, would be very complicated because people are very complicated.
So I'm gonna touch just very so anyway, I will agree with you, John, from the standpoint that the letter may or may not be authentic. I think there's been a lot of argument around that, which to me, kind of even with the Kanye thing, becomes kind of a moot point in some fashion to me once again, because I read the letter and I just ask myself, is it true, right? When I read these things, I say, well, are any parts of it true? And do we still see these tactics being used today? And once again, I think the answer is yes. And because of that, I feel like it's important to not get caught up in, trying to talk authenticity, trying to talk that stuff. And let's try to address what the problems are, and figure out solutions, right? So that's why, I think it's really important that we read this letter, right? And we take what's being said and put it into today's language. Okay, so my example would be this, right? When I read this and it talks about taking them out of their natural, that was one of the things that it said, right? I'll go back to it, just giggles real quick, but it makes this point right here where it says, so kind of that last part that I read there at the top, what does it say? First of all, we need da 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 da. We need for them, about the life, right? What we do with the horses, that we break them from a life to another, that we reduce them from their natural state of nature. Whereas nature provides, whereas nature provides them with capacity to take care of their offspring, we break them of their natural independence and thereby create dependency status. So what we're able to do, like it says here, is useful reduction for our business. So what that says to me is, okay, so, and so how do I put that in today's language, right? Well, to me, that's our welfare system, right? If we get more and more people dependent on welfare systems, which we see in a lot of our poor communities, we limit what they can do, and thus we control them. So now we control their income, we control the food they eat, we control the schools they go to, which is the education they get. We control those things. And so now we essentially control them. We control your community. We control what you can do in your community. So, so when I say examples of how that works today, that's the example I see today of how we're still caught up in that system, right? And so how do you change that? Well, if I just look at that example, I say, well, one way that you change that is, financial literacy, right? And starting to teach people, specifically our people, financial literacy. So when they start understanding maybe little things simply as patience, right? Is a better word I'm looking for, but delayed gratification, right? Which means a lot of things, right? In our commercial world, and we talked about that before with technology, in our commercial world, everybody wants everything today. The best example of that, right, are college graduates who thinks that their house should be as big as their parents' house, right? We see that all the time. You get these college graduates, I can't go live like that. I need my, And so what do? They go and they get huge loans on houses that they can't afford, or they got to have this car. So they go and they buy this car that's, 2 and 3 times their income, right? And they get caught up in this credit system, right? Or even school-wise, and we talked about this before, right? We teach kids from the age of 5 to go to school, so they go to college, which a lot of times in college, they end up with these huge debts, and then essentially they become slaves to debt. So, you got that slavery to debt, and then you have that mentality of, well, hell, I can't have it anyway, right? And you watch, your grandmother, not your grandmother, maybe your aunt, maybe it could be your grandmother, whether it's your mom, your dad, kids raising kids, right? So you have, your aunts, your uncles, and you look up to them, and they're on, food stamps, government, whatever. and they're doing okay. And you start hearing phrases like, well, I could go work a job, but I actually make more if I do this because when they take the taxes out and blah, blah, blah. But they don't recognize that they're actually being enslaved. Does that make sense?
I 100% agree with you. You know, a lot of people don't realize that, and the only reason why I agree with you is the fact that I'm living through it right now. Right, I was taught that, hey, if you go to Notre Dame and you work hard, you can get a good job, and I don't fault my parents for feeding me false information, but that was what they, that is what they knew at the time. And I ended up going to Notre Dame, and after Notre Dame, I didn't get the job that I thought I deserved, and didn't realize that uh, you know there was more that went into it, on top of what my parents taught me, which my parents taught me the importance of hard work, but it was the relationship piece that was missing for me. But going back to what you're saying, yeah, I'm saddled with, student debt right now. And, the only, I mean, that's one of the main reasons I'm working is, to try and pay it off. And, really over the years, I mean, I go back to what Dr. Moss said, about falling into, another 300 years of slavery. But I'd argue, we're still not we're still not out of it yet. I mean, because there's so many systems in place where, including law enforcement, where just one misstep and your life is ruined. And the way things are set up right now, people are so distracted. They're distracted from what the true problems are, because they're caught up in their own problems, in terms of paying off student debt, or trying to get off of welfare, and trying to get an education. I mean, like I said, the system's in place right now. I mean, they're doing pretty much the same thing that
I
was
mean,
done.
if you think about a welfare system, right? If let's just say that you lose your job, because of the economy, whatever, the bank's laying off, whoever, right? Cable
Right.
company. Like, you've been with them forever. I mean, this is real talk. I mean, I hear about this in Florida all the time. I've been with the cable company. I've been a utility company for X amount. Such and such comes and buys them off. They have layoffs, right? That's just a real deal. So now you're forced to go into this welfare system. And depending on your age and depending on your education, right, you could be a little out of pocket, right, as to finding new gainful employment. So now you're getting your food stamps, and you're getting some unemployment if you can get it. And depending on, the time that you're off, you may even start getting, I don't know what else you get after that, right? I just know the food stamps. Maybe there's some other assistance you might get in housing, so on and so forth. But as soon as you get a job, right, making $10 an hour, what do? Right? They start cutting your benefits. So the question now says, okay, well, do I keep working where I could possibly keep making more money, or do I just stop because these benefits actually outweigh what I'm making in money once my taxes get taken out and all this kind of stuff? So should the system then say, well, since you're still working and we see that you're gainfully employed and we still see that there's a deficit of X amount based on the median income of what we know it takes for, a household to be able to survive with X number of kids, or whatever the case may be, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep you on these, this bit of your assistance, for these next 9 months as you transition off and you find another job, whatever, you understand what I'm saying? And to me, that's where the system, to me, is designed to kind of keep you enslaved. And like I said, if we go into law enforcement, we can go into hundreds of ways, especially now with the decriminalization of marijuana, right? Where we still have people in states where it's legal now that are still locked up, and we already see how the sentences are just way different depending on, what your color is. But not to go too far outside of that box. My whole point is, when we read this letter, what are some of the other things that we can look at that show that we are truly still being enslaved? And I think that's where the Kanye statement comes up. Because like I said, when you read this, you can say, oh yeah, we really still are enslaved. You know what I mean? And it has been how long? And I think the whole point of it is kind of, even what Kanye was saying, is like, you can look at And once again, I know there's some differences, and I'm expecting Scribe to bring them out. But you can look at Indians, Chinese. Now we have all of these, Middle Easterners. You name it, right? Even down to, I'm going to go as far as saying even some Haitians, Jamaicans. They come to this country and their mindset is the glass half full, not half empty, right? They come here, they see opportunity, they see what they can do. We live here and all we see is what's against us, right? And so mentally, are we really enslaved? And we don't really see the opportunities that we have because of, maybe it's our expectations. Maybe it's because historically we are taught and we think that we all come from slaves. And so our expectation on life is minimal. Once again, just throwing stuff out there. But when I read this Willie Lynch letter, and I've had a few different times, right? It always takes me to that place of, regardless of whether this is real or a black man wrote it to get us to start thinking, it's real. And although the tactics that are written in this letter aren't necessarily used, identically today, meaning, people aren't tarred and feathered and, burned in front of other people. Well, in some ways they are, right? We have on video where police sit there and shoot another black man and say they were scared and that there's no justice. So now, as a black man, you just feel like if these kind of things happen to you, well, that's just part of it. It's part of being a black man. Not to mention, your parents start teaching you that when you come to a police officer, do this, do this, do this, right? White kid says, I know my rights, right? Black kid, if you say that, what happens, right? So I still kind of come back to, when we kind of look at these things and we think about some of these mental shackles that we might have on our brain, once again, what are some of them, right? And what are maybe some ways that we can go about trying to fix them? Because I do feel like there are some ways we can do it, right? Albeit they're small and they take a while. But I feel like there's something we all can do.
Well, there's two things. And, this is kind of like, this is what I would prescribe, in regards to healing and fixing and improving the African American community. And the first thing on top of the list, and this really drives me, is mental health. Mental health is probably the issue in the African American community that is the main issue. But an African American will be the first to say, "Oh, I don't need therapy."
Sure.
And I was watching this. I'm sure some of y'all have heard of this show, called Dear White People on Netflix. And the administrator, the black administrator, was having a conversation with the guy that got the gun pulled on him, and he was experiencing trauma or whatnot. And he made a statement that was very impactful for me, because it shows the problem. It shows the problem in our community. And the statement goes, "Look at all of these people walking around here. Some of the main issues that they have to contend with are, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or getting ready for their finals. Those are some of the major issues, and most of them use therapy." And so it made me realize, like a lot of these folks, whites, Asians, all of them, they use therapy, for some of the most mundane things, because they see the value in it. And we as a community don't. And that's very, that's going to be a tough hill to climb. And and I would challenge you. I would challenge yourselves. You probably think that, oh, I don't need therapy, but I would challenge you to go anyway, because it's very, and the only reason why I'm so strong the fact that, I used to be one of those people, right? I was like, oh, I don't need therapy. And it wasn't until my kids, my 17-year-old, she started going to therapy. And then and then that's when I saw the value in it. And then I started going to therapy with with my wife, and and then I was going to therapy by myself, and for me, I'm a problem solver. I always want to try and, figure out what can I do to make myself better. And that was probably one of the best things I've ever did, was just go to therapy so I can understand, who I am, have a better understanding of who I am and my heritage. And, it actually helps me to think better too, because then you get to, see how other people think and feel. And then you're able to have more empathy for, which, like I said, all of that, everything I'm mentioning right now, goes towards, like I said, is major dividends, when it comes down to, being able to heal yourself mentally, and then being able to see the world in new eyes. And so that's the first thing. And then the second thing, of course, is, at first I was going to say economics. We have to figure out how to, we need to figure out how to leverage, our buying power, and, in order to, help it benefit ourselves. But there's something else that comes above that, and that's actually education, knowledge. And, it probably goes lockstep with mental health, because, you have to understand and know that mental health is a benefit for you, and not not a setback or a drawback. And so it's just, learning and knowledge, and, combining that with time, giving it time. Those are the three elements, that would fundamentally change our community for the better.
Anybody else?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, the mental health thing, okay, but there are plenty of other communities that feel the same way. You go to the Hispanic community, they the same way. So I don't think that's a stigma, and particularly for men, period, across the board, white, black, African, whatever, about going for that. I don't think that that's the number one issue that's affecting African Americans. I mean, for me, it's what the second point that you made. It's about education, and it's about role models, right? So you figure this: growing up, you grow up, let's say South Park over here in Houston. That's a low economic area. If all you see around you, the individuals that are quote unquote successful, are those who roll around, hustle on the corner. They got they got whatever on 22s, on some swingers or whatever. It's the definition of your success. So not only that, right? So you have that, and then you supplant that now with all the other sources of media, which do nothing but help to solidify that idea that, oh, this is what success looks like. Top that with now, you think about our children? And I can't remember, it must have been Holloway. We had a discussion a long time ago about, or maybe it was you, Justin Smith, about the way other cultures, what do they reward their children for? We, for the most part, about the only ones, and actually, believe it or not, a lot of white folks as well, in particular in the southern United States, we reward our children based upon their athletic achievements. Simple as that. What do? You reward your child based upon how well they did in soccer, basketball, football, baseball. What do you spend all this? You think about how much money is spent on sending your kid to camp, buying equipment, going to these little league games. All this money that is spent on sports and not on education.
You don't even have you don't have a college fund. You start talking about tutoring, no, that's too expensive.
Tell me about it. That's what you're rewarding your child on. That's the role model and example that you said. Like I say, it's just not us. In Texas, man, let me tell you, white folks the same way. They reward the children based on athletics. So now, but here's the difference between a lot of black folks and white folks. they're making a lot of money, and they're already putting money aside to put their child through college.
Sure.
But us, a lot of us, we have rewarded, and all you've done is said, what's success for me to you is you being successful in sports. In particular, and I'll say this even more so, in particularly males, because females will live different, but males in particularly, I ain't gonna lie, my kid, I got a big kid. So, you know, the first thing I think about, oh, man, he gonna be 6'5", about 265 pounds, defensive end, power forward, small forward. I ain't gonna lie, that's what I think about. So, I'm an intelligent individual, and of course I'm gonna teach my child, but I'm not gonna lie. I would love to see him playing defensive end in some college somewhere, so I don't have to pay for school. But in the same regard, but it's just automatic, and I consider myself not to be in that mindset. But the first thing that comes to my mind about my kid is that, and I can't lie, it does. And I have to guard myself about that. And I have a cousin, man, same thing. He got a son. He played in the NFL. He said, "Man, Jay, I gotta Jay, that's my nigga name. I gotta keep myself from trying to push him to that because what I don't want him to do is to forget what's important, and that's his education."
Hey,
and it's very difficult.
This is probably going to shut off in a minute. I'm just letting you know. I know we're after 10, but I'm okay with continuing to talk.
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know.
That's really it. Yeah, and I'm done. I just think about that in the reward structure that we have for our children and how that then comes out as they grow old and what they want to get and what they want to have. Right?
No, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, there's a couple of things you said there, which you're right about. I think we were talking a little bit about that.